everyone. What a wonderful morning we've had so far. Welcome to the Farm Business Technology Room. My name is Krista Wright, and I'm a project manager with Farm Management Canada. Hope you all had an incredible day one of AgEx. I believe day two, we are back and we're right into our concurrent sessions here. First of all, we'd like to thank MNP for their sponsorship of this session. I'd like to introduce you to Stu Pearson, National Lead, Crops Division, and he's also on the Executive Farm Management Canada's Board of Directors. Stu, the floor is yours. Stu, where are you?
Yes.
Oh, Stu? Okay. Oh, there he is. Okay. Surprise. All right. Stu, the floor is yours.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stuart Pearson, and I'm a member of the board for Farm Management Canada. For my day job, I'm the national leader of crop services at MNP, based in Edmonton, Alberta. And for my evening and weekend job, I'm a co-owner of an 8,000-acre that we are seeing a lot. There's a high chance it will in the not too distant future. Now, the real Stu, is he here? Hey, I'm Stu.
Hey, who are you?
Hey, I'm Stu.
So this is not the real Stu, but he's got my face, or very close to it, and we wanted to start our presentation off today by showing you what a deep fake looks like. And so this is actually Eugene from our Toronto office, joining us from Toronto today. And he's going to talk to you a little bit about cybersecurity, and specifically on this, the first topic he's going to talk about is deep fakes. And this is actually going on.
I am going to disconnect as Stu, and I'm going to rejoin as Eugene. I'll be right back. All right, let's see if we can get this underway.
Let's see if we can rejoin here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hopefully you can see me okay.
We just can't see you yet.
Can't see me yet. Let's see if we got
There
we
now
go.
we got you.
Okay.
So there's
This is the real Eugene.
This is really Eugene. Go ahead, Eugene.
All right, thanks, Stu. Well, that was interesting. That's the first time we've actually tried that. So thanks for all of you to be patient with us as we tried that out. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone. Make sure that shows up on the screen. Okay, I think we're finally there, Stu. Thanks for that. Yeah, so thanks everyone. Welcome to our presentation. So here's the real Stuart biography. I'll give you mine here in a second. So thanks again. My name is Eugene Ng. I'm based out of Toronto. I lead our national cybersecurity practice. And over the next 40 minutes or so, just kind of give you an update in the agri industry, just as well as cybersecurity in general. Talk a little bit about the current state of cyber agri industry, specifically risks that have been identified by the Government of Canada. I like to throw in a lot of demonstrations, as I'm sure you can see throughout the presentation, just to kind of keep everybody on their toes. I'll also share some results from a poll that we did recently across farms across Canada. So just talking a little bit about, the readiness for cybersecurity and some of the top risks that we're looking at, and then kind of what's new and what's next in the world of cyber. So as far as kind of the current state, probably the best thing for Canadians out there is really the National Federal Cyber Assessment. This is the one from 2023 and 2024. They just recently released the 25 and 26 Federal Cyber Assessment. Really, everything has stayed exactly the same, with the exception of increased sophistication, as again you can tell by the real-time deep fakes, as well as other kind of social engineering techniques and tactics that threat actors are using. When we look at the state-sponsored threat actors, a couple of years ago, we were talking Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, those nation states. And really this year, we're pretty much focused on the same threat actors and state-sponsored. China is really kind of leading the pack there. And then we'll also talk a little bit about influencing Canadians online. Quick little stat, 80% of Canadians get their news now today through social media. And we're going to show you some examples of how threat actors are leveraging, again, this deep fake technology to spread disinformation, to get jobs inside organizations and other techniques. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about kind of how they're using AI-based tools to execute these attacks. When we talk about just the overall risk level, this is a study from the World Economic Forum that was released earlier this year, and it's a poll of individuals across the world that talk about kind of what are the top risks that we should be concerned about. And leaders across the world agree. Extreme weather, certainly no surprise to those of you that are in the room. But then when we look at some of the other ones that are highlighted, I would argue most of those would be kind of considered cyber-related issues and challenges. So, if you add those up, we're pretty much the top risk that individuals, organizations, and countries are facing today. Now, within the cyber.gc website, and I have a link to that later on in the presentation, the Government of Canada just recently released a study around the agri-food and agri-industry cybersecurity state. So really similar risks that farmers are facing today. So ransomware attacks, which I showed you in that initial part of the presentation, financially motivated cybercrime. So these are kind of the frauds, really the business email compromise, which I'm sure you've heard about, but we'll show you some examples of that. Increased sophistication for state-sponsored threats that really look at like food safety, farm safety, personnel safety. We talk about water filtration plants, right, in the kind of industrial and IoT environments. We talk about, all the automated systems, ventilation systems that you would have in the barns, as well as, other kind of safety mechanisms that you would be leveraging. Supply chain vulnerabilities, certainly, which is one of the top risks of, your fertilizer supplier, your other suppliers, your fuel suppliers. I mean, I know we all heard about the incident that Petro-Canada suffered last year, as well as emerging technologies. This would be kind of the IoTs, the sensors that you have for, moisture, temperature, humidity, all that kind of stuff. And I'll show you some examples of how that's impacting us collectively. When we talk about the ransomware, again, it should be really no surprise. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I think most of the people that are probably in this presentation have heard about ransomware. It's, again, very impactful for agricultural operations. We've seen large organizations be down for weeks with recovery costs in the millions of dollars, and that's continuing to occur. When we talk about financially motivated, I'll talk further on about leveraging deep fakes for, people trying to get inside of an organization to exploit. We're talking about collusion, kind of the traditional items where fraud is concerned. But for the majority of farms that are out there, it's really around the business email compromise where, threat actors change the invoice number. And again, I'll show you some examples of that later on in this presentation that you should be aware of. And finally, state-sponsored, again, just really around disruption to critical infrastructure. And I'm sure, you are all aware, food production and supply is certainly a critical piece of Canada's infrastructure. And finally, just the supply chain that we talked about, fertilizer, feed, all that kind of stuff that you rely upon. Certainly that disruption is key. And then we already talked about the IoT devices. When we talk about cyber risk, there are very sophisticated attacks that are out there, but I would say, and the government of Canada says actually, that the 80-20 rule for cybersecurity is kind of around three key areas. The first one is phishing, and I think I have only one slide on email phishing, but I'll show you some of the newer ways of trying to steal user credentials. Brute force and password guessing, right? So if you're not using multi-factor authentication, just using standard usernames and passwords, you're certainly susceptible to threat actors, trying to brute force and gain entry into externally exposed systems. And then the last one, which again, we talked about in kind of those key risks in the agri-food industry, exploiting software vulnerabilities. And I'll show you some examples of what that looks like here. So when we talk about exploiting software vulnerabilities, I mean, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of vulnerabilities that are released on a weekly basis across all different systems, applications, and IoT devices that are out there. One of the most recent examples were threat researchers looking at exploiting robotic vacuum cleaners. So these would be the ones that would run around the house like a Roomba. And as they would bump into furniture and pets and people, it would yell out racial slurs and profanities. So one of the big challenges here is they could also turn on the camera, the built-in camera in the vacuum cleaner, which you can see there. And then I have a quick little video, and hopefully the sound will play through Zoom on the vacuum cleaner talking to you. So I will just play this here.
Hello, Sean. I'm watching you. Hello, Sean. I'm watching you.
All right. So that's how, if you don't patch your systems, and this could be any IoT device that you're plugging into your farm network or environment, you need to make sure that the system is secure. If it's not, you want to make sure that it's appropriately isolated from other key systems that are that you're using on the network. Now, social engineering is something that I'm very passionate about and love talking about, which again, why we wanted to start the presentation off with kind of that real-time deep fake. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through phishing emails, but what I did want to cover off is just around the business email compromise. We're seeing this time and time again, where people are figuring out who's paying the bills, who's getting the invoices, compromising those mailboxes, and then changing, the bank account information in order to redirect those payments, both from a supplier as well as a customer perspective. What we're seeing more and more of is around this domain squatting or domain lookalike, right? So specifically with MNP, switching the M for two N's. And what threat actors are doing now is leveraging AI to automate this entire process, to basically point at an organization, register those domains, and then leveraging like Fraud GPT or other AI-based tools to create campaigns against organizations and individuals. So the way it typically works, really no difference when you're looking at phishing, is they're asking you to do something, change something, transfer funds. In the past, cybersecurity folks would say, look out for spelling, look out for grammar. Today, the spelling should be perfect. The images, the logos, everything should be perfect. The domains may be a little different, but even if it comes from a compromised mailbox, the one thing that you want to just take a split second to do is making sure that you recognize the individual, the organization, making sure you pay attention to what they're asking you to do. And if, any questions come up, call the individual and make sure it's what they say they want it to do. So just exercise additional caution when you're getting these suspicious types of emails. Now, the one thing I was going to share with you is some of the poll results that we did with Real Agri Studies, Cybersecurity on the Farm. So this poll and research was conducted in the summer of 2024. If you get a chance, we did a podcast with Real Agri Studies last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure if it's been released yet, but certainly keep an eye for that online. So just to kind of give you a little set as to what other farms are thinking when it comes to cybersecurity. About half believe that they're somewhat knowledgeable. Only 7% indicated that they're very knowledgeable about cyber threats. So, part of the great thing today is you're sitting here today listening to the session and trying to increase your level of knowledge, which is terrific. But certainly collectively, we have a lot of work to do within the agri-food industry to bring that up to speed. Real Agri Studies also kind of segregated and segmented out some of the polling results between supply managed and non-supply managed farms. What's interesting is the non-supply managed, basically said that they had very knowledgeable. They were very knowledgeable around cybersecurity versus the supply managed farms that were out there. Experience with cyber attacks. I found this slide very interesting. Only 9% of farms actually admitted to or agreed that they had received a cyber attack, which is fascinating to me because those numbers would probably be reversed when we talk about other organizations and public entities that are out there. I would say probably 100% of organizations that we've dealt with has certainly received a cyber attack. So I'm not sure if that's a true answer, and I would probably argue that they don't know versus the fact that they're not that they're answering no. Now, for those farms that did indicate that they suffered a cyber attack, almost half of them were moderate to extreme impact. So again, we're talking about systems that are going offline, and you should ask yourself the question as you're preparing your incident response. What would happen if these systems went down for a extended period of time? For those of you that haven't gone through a ransomware incident, typically the recovery time is in the weeks, not days and not hours. And again, another reason to ensure that you have an incident response plan and adequate backups for your key systems. Now, as part of that poll and results, the majority of the attacks, again, for those that admitted to suffering a cyber attack, the majority are around phishing, malware, and ransomware, which I would argue is kind of a combination between those first two. And again, password attacks, which is that brute force, and insider attacks, which we'll talk a little later on using the deep fakes. But all in all, the tools, the techniques and tactics are almost identical within the agri-food industry as they are in kind of the wider public. I found this interesting as well. So when we talk about supply chain attacks, so again, overall, the 540 farms that responded to the survey, almost half of them had a supplier that received a cyber attack in the past month, which again, I find fascinating because only 9% of farms actually admitted to, but 50% of them said their supplier had suffered a cyber attack. So something doesn't quite jive in those numbers. This is key, and you'll hear me talk about this quite a bit in today's presentation, is around a cybersecurity plan for the farm. This could easily be, a cybersecurity plan for any organization. 80% of farms don't have any plan documented. Typically, this would involve, contacting key suppliers, key customers, your cyber insurer, maybe it's a legal entity, your IT team, like who's actually going to come out on site and recover these systems. You want to make sure you have a plan in place to address, I would say, the inevitable of an attack. And we talk about the attitudes towards cyber. Again, I've just highlighted some of the key findings in the poll. So the majority certainly are concerned about cybersecurity. The majority certainly want to increase knowledge and awareness of cybersecurity. And the last one, of course, increasing preparedness, which again comes back to our incident response plan. I found this interesting as well. So the other thing that they did with the poll results is they broke down the experience with cyber attacks to this farm size based on income. And you can see pretty clearly on here that we're talking about the larger farm by income that's typically suffering from these cyber attacks. Not sure if it's a combination of just their digital footprint, with online systems and, email and all, leveraging all of the latest latest technologies to do that, but certainly an interesting thing if you are in that $5 million and over income. And same thing, I'm pretty sure they go hand in hand to the size of the farm and the amount of income that that a farm generates throughout the year. I found this interesting as well by age category of farmers. So I wouldn't say the elders, the 65 and over, are necessarily out of the woods. It seems to be pretty evenly distributed. And then the last slide that I'll have in the polling results for non-supply versus supply managed. All right. If you want further details and results, feel free to go to the website. You can download a copy of that report. All right. Now, I wanted to show some examples as well of other social engineering. I think a lot of times we get caught up in the fact that social engineering only happens through email. But what I want to do is kind of show you some of the other attacks that have happened over the years to try to, get people's credentials. So the example that I have here is, actually, I didn't even really introduce myself. So I joined MNP in 2016. I had a cybersecurity consulting business. I merged with MNP in 2016. And in 2016, this was MNP's corporate website. You can see it there. What I did is I took a screen scrape or a copy of the MNP corporate webpage, and I put it on my personal website. And what I did is I injected some malicious code into this specific tile, which points to a press release of the merger itself. So what we're going to do, and what I'm going to show you is, I'm sure you're all familiar with tabs in a browser. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and click on the news release. It'll open up a new tab, but instead of reading the tab, if you just keep your eyes to the left of that active tab, I'll walk you through the video and just go through it that way. So here is our browser. So again, for those of you that aren't familiar with tabs, we'll just open a couple of websites here just to kind of demonstrate. This one here, I believe I did for another presentation, another organization. I'll open up the world's greatest hockey team website here. And unfortunately, I can't hear all the clapping and cheering in the audience, but I just imagine it in my own head. So we'll open up my personal webpage that hosts this malicious code. And what we'll do is, as an end user, you go to this. It could be a forum. It could be for recipes. It could be for whatever. Opens up a new tab. And again, don't worry about reading it. Just keep your eyes to the left of that tab. All right, so it may be difficult to see on the big screen there, but for those of you that didn't see it, what happens is in the background, that tab header will change to Gmail. The website itself will also shift to a Google login. And so you, as the end user, are thinking, oh, I must have signed out of my Gmail account. You're actually signing into my personal webpage and providing me with your credentials. So again, the guidance that I typically give is anytime you're submitting credentials, if you just take a split second to view the URL and the site that you're entering, it'll help you in the long term. So clearly, in order to prevent against these attacks, hopefully those of you that are in the audience have multi-factor authentication turned on, and we'll show you some examples of how threat actors can breach that. But certainly this is your greatest protection against stolen credentials. All right. As we keep moving to other types of social engineering, so another big one is around QR codes. If you haven't seen it, on the left-hand side, I'm assuming everyone knows what a QR code is. On the right-hand side, you'll see a little Toronto Maple Leaf logo. So I was doing a presentation for an executive committee. There's about 85 executives sitting at a golf event. And we handed out some sheets of paper with a QR code to win a free pair of Leaf tickets. Okay, and if you're curious, this is what the landing page looked like. What we did is we screen scraped their Office 365 login, and with the hopes that somebody would submit credentials, and we would present that back to them as part of their cybersecurity awareness training. Out of 85 executives, I can't see any hands, so I'm not going to ask any questions. 25 executives submitted credentials for a pair of Leaf tickets. I had no idea they were in such high demand. And as part of our security awareness, what we did is we raffled off a pair of Leaf tickets for those that did not submit credentials. So just a little twist on a cybersecurity awareness program. So certainly they're becoming very common. I'm sure you have them there at your conference today, even in emails. So for the longest time, they were not used in emails because people would have to take out a secondary device to snap that URL. They're easy to create, easy to replace, easy to alter. For those of you that are in the audience, again, I can't see everybody, but you can go ahead and click on that QR code if you like. I'm assuming no one's going to do it, so it'll just take you to this Facebook page. Anyways, I'm not a huge Leaf fan, but okay. So in a real world attack, this is one in the city of Ottawa where threat actors replaced the QR code with their own. And so what you would do is you would go up, scan the QR code with your phone. It would link you to a malicious and a fraudulent payment website for parking. And so you would give the threat actors your credit card number. You would pay for an $8 parking ticket, and you'd probably get a parking ticket as well. So this does happen in real life. So really, we talk about tips and tricks. If you check to see if there's a sticker, if there's a URL that you can type in instead to validate where that QR code is going, or if it's asking for credentials or credit card payments, just take a split second to make sure that it's legitimate. The image that I have on the right-hand side is this was sent to all MNP team members just last week. So in one email trying to promote a discount for Good Life Fitness, there were actually 3 QR codes listed for every single one of those things. So they're definitely becoming more commonplace, and you'll start to see them more and more. Okay. Sorry, there's a lot of slides, so I'm just going to keep going. The MFA that we talked about, multi-factor authentication, again, I'm assuming most of you hopefully have this turned on. If you don't, it's got to be your number one takeaway from today's presentation. For those of you that have MFA, of course, threat actors evolve. And I'm going to show you an example of, we call this an MFA man-in-the-middle bypass attack. So what this is we have a phishing email, typically, that gets sent to an end user. Because it's a man in the middle, that link actually goes to an MNP-owned website. And then what we do is when the user connects to us, we pass those credentials and authentication onto Office 365. And then, well, anyways, I'll play the video for you and I'll just walk you through kind of what it looks like. So the user gets the phishing email, right? Could be whatever, could be browsing something on the, oh, I guess I gotta press play. So the user will press on the, click on the link. It'll open up a new URL. This one here is called officeportals.ca, which is an MNP-owned website. What we'll do is we'll screen scrape the Office 365 corporate logon to make sure it looks legitimate. The end user, thinking everything is fine, will submit their username, Active Directory, or Azure AD, credentials, usernames and password. Again, for those of you that are familiar with MFA, which I hope is all of you, you take out your authenticator app with the 6-digit code, or it'll send you an SMS token. That user will type it in. And again, because they're submitting it to us in between, we submit it to Microsoft. Microsoft says, yep, you're authorized and authenticated. And now, because we're sitting between the user and Office 365, the user gets a successful sign-in, and now we have full access to Teams, OneDrive, email, and SharePoint. Okay, so just because you have MFA turned on, you still want to be cognizant and aware of these types of more sophisticated threats that are out there. All right. Other types of social engineering that you should be aware of, public Wi-Fi. I'm assuming there's public Wi-Fi at the conference there today. It's unfortunate that I'm not there because I probably would do something. But if you don't know that public Wi-Fi may not be safe, I'll just tell you public Wi-Fi may not be safe. And I'll set this up by just playing a quick little video around social login. You'll see this in everything from LinkedIn to company websites to applications. Is instead of using or setting up another username and password, just go ahead and use your Google account, your Facebook account, so on and so forth. So I'll play a quick little video on social login, and we'll go from there.
User existing social media credentials, including Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn, to access the Wi-Fi. Retailers can also offer access by a loyalty or membership card to gain additional insights into VIP users and grant access to promotions or coupons. The fully customizable captive web portal promotes the brand and integrates social logins as well as loyalty program and mobile phone options for login.
All right, so that's social login. If you want to see it, this is what it looks like at a restaurant. You go to connect to the Wi-Fi, you click on connect with Facebook. Typically, it's already cached on your system, or there's a cookie on your system. If not, it'll prompt you for your username and password. For those of you that are sitting in my presentation today, hopefully the first thing you'll do is make sure that you're logging on to Facebook, right? But surprise, surprise, not everyone is sophisticated enough or attentive enough to look for that all the time. This is just my little disclaimer for MNP Legal. Now, this is going back quite a few years, 2015. I was asked to hack a conference audience in real time. And I came up with this concept where I would create a public Wi-Fi hotspot, have people sign in with their Facebook, Gmail, LinkedIn, and Twitter accounts, and then get them access to the free Wi-Fi. And instead of signing them on to their social media accounts, what we did is we actually captured their credentials, logged on as them to their social media, and then presented back to the audience. Okay, so I'll show you kind of what it looked like. This is the conference at the Ritz-Carlton. Again, really no security. We knew that they were holding their conference there. I went in with my team. We set up a bunch of access points throughout the stage, tucked them underneath the stage. And this was the actual wireless environment at the time. So we set up access points. We had them connected to an LTE router, so completely separate from the hotel environment. Ritz-Carlton had a conference SSID, and then we gave them a free, convenient alternative because at the Ritz, our conference organizers did not pay for the internet and Wi-Fi package in the conference hall. So when the users connected to the Wi-Fi, we had them sign on with their social media credentials. I gave people a fighting chance because MNP was not a sponsor of the conference, but KPMG was. So they paid a lot of money, so I kept their logo on the splash screen. And we always want to give people a fighting chance to notice something that's a little bit odd. Hopefully, you recognize this screen. Social media sign-on, right? Because threat actors will reuse the content whenever they can. Does anyone ever read the terms and conditions on a public Wi-Fi? No, I don't think so. Anyways, this is the very last sentence that I had posted on our terms and conditions. All right. Okay, so when you're using public Wi-Fi, you need to be aware of the fact that whoever is providing that service knows what you're doing, what sites you're going to, and the type of content that you're consuming. So in this case, some of the earlier parts of the conference weren't that exciting. So people were streaming Netflix over my internet connection. And then we started capturing attendees' passwords. So here's all their passwords, or not all of them, but some of them. That was an interesting one, but it turned out it was just a pattern on a keyboard. We had access to their Facebook accounts. I did post it. We had access to their Gmail for Old Navy receipts. We had flight itinerary details, holiday details. They went to a sloth sanctuary. Anyways, long story short, the reason I like to show this slide is at the time we had 400 registrants, 65 individuals actually submitted credentials. And when we did an analysis on the password strength and length of passwords, it was about the same as kind of at the time, the biggest password breach that was out there. 50% had 8 characters or less, and less than 1% contain a non-alphanumeric character. So my big point here is please have a long password or passphrase as the guidance that we're using today. And please, again, make sure you use a non-alphanumeric or a special character in your password. That presentation went so well that they asked me to do it again in Ottawa later on. And unbeknownst to me, the National Post was there, and they did a quick little article on that exercise. Okay, so what's next? So we've seen some of the social engineering, we've seen some of the phishing stuff that's out there trying to steal credentials. Now what's happening is they're using AI-based tools to execute some of these attacks. So the business email compromise, which I think most people are aware of, what they're doing now is they're integrating voice deception. So they're actually calling individuals to authorize that transaction. So pretending to be the CEO, pretending to be the controller, whatever it is to actually go ahead and make that. So it's kind of like a multi-pronged attack. And you can see some of the headlines there from 2019, where the voice deepfake was used to scam the CEO out of, around $250,000. So voice deception. The other thing that they're doing is they're doing this for grandparent scams, right? So they're using these voice generators, voice AI tools to pretend to be their loved ones. Again, to execute the grandparent scam, which again, I'm assuming everyone is aware of that particular type of fraud and attack against elderly. So the part of the presentation I have now is just a sample of how you actually perform voice fraud. So I thought, let's try it. Let's see how difficult this would be. So I signed up for a VoIP account. I downloaded a voice changing software. This one here is called Screaming Bee. Basically, you can change your male voice to a female. You can put background noise. So one of the things that you should be aware of if you're listening to fraudulent voice calls is listen for, a lot of background noise, because what they try to do is distract the brain from actually picking up some of the nuanced pieces of conversation. And so I just tried to test it out, and I think I have a test recording here. I'll play it for you in a second.
Hello, how are you? Can you pick up some milk?
All right, so that's me as a female. Sounds pretty terrible, pretty digitized. I typically will ask the audience, who would know your voice the best? Like probably someone that lives in your household, right? So I ended up calling my wife to try to test to see how well this voice deception would work. A little bit of background. I live in a small town outside of Toronto. We have a local newspaper called the Aaron Advocate. And what I did is I basically called my wife, pretending to be from the newspaper, and asked her for her credit card information because the newspaper had lost her credit card for a subscription. So just to give you an idea of how small town I live in, somebody was looking for horseradish, and in 15 minutes, somebody said they can help and they were going to deliver it. Okay, so just to give you an idea. So I went ahead and recorded the conversation I had with my wife. I'm going to play it for you here today, and hopefully it'll come through the speakers all right.
Hello.
Oh, hi, is this Drew Daigle?
Yes, it is.
Hi, my name is Amanda, and I'm calling from the Aaron Advocate. We've had an IT issue and lost all of our subscribers' credit card information. We just have the last 4 digits.
Okay.
We're just trying to update our files. Would you be able to give me your updated credit card info?
I don't really feel comfortable doing that over the phone, just because of all the stuff that's going on right now with phone scams and stuff like that. Is there another way that I can get that information to you?
Completely understand. You know what, Drew Daigle? This is Eugene Ng. I was just testing you. What do you think? Hello?
I don't like you as a girl.
You did really well. Really good. It's actually part of my presentation.
I don't want to talk to you like this.
Okay, so I cut off the conversation. There's a lot of profanity. Probably not everyone wants to hear that, but she offered to get me the information another way. I could have spun up a fake website, have her enter her credit card information, and off we are to the races. So just kind of a real quick example of how threat actors can use voice fraud to commit some of these social engineering attacks. We'll kind of finish off the presentation, and I'll hand it back over to Stu around deepfakes. So that was kind of the first part of the presentation. So threat actors now are using deepfakes to do romance scams, right? So pretending to be, these beautiful male or female people, talking to them, scamming them out of lots of money, versus just kind of a traditional phone call. When we talk about voice deepfakes, now of course Donald Trump's probably the most recorded person in history, so there's a lot of sample. What we're finding now is you only need about 3 minutes of someone's voice to be able to create an AI copy. One of the challenges that we have right now with the tools is there's a little bit of a delay if you try to do it as real time, which is why when Stu and I walked out on the stage together, I just used my own voice. But again, I think as this year evolves, we're going to see this getting better and better. So just to show you how good AI voice deepfakes are becoming, I'm going to play you 2 clips. One is a real Donald Trump quote, and the other one is a fake one. Unfortunately, I can't ask the audience which one's real or which one's fake, but I'll tell you after the recordings play.
It's I call it a witch hunt. That's exactly what it is. It's a vicious witch hunt, and you know what? It's very bad for our country. If I were to run, I'd run as a Republican. They're the dumbest group of voters in the country.
All right, so I'll keep you out of suspense. So the first one is the real quote. The second one is the AI generated one. All right, I think they're both things that that President Trump had said, but just to give you an idea of the quality of AI generated voices, that's kind of out there. All right, last few slides, and I'll pass it over to you, Stu. So again, we demonstrated at the beginning of the presentation the deepfake real time. So I think a lot of people are aware of the ability to have kind of videos after the fact be deepfake, but the fact that you can actually do real time is actually extremely frightening. So this is just me in my office as Vladimir Putin. So in case you're wondering who that is. Now, why do we talk about this? This is a case that happened earlier this year where there were 3 individuals on a deepfake Teams conference call, 1 legitimate individual from a corporation. Those 3 deepfake individuals pretended to be, the CFO, a controller, and some other individual. They convinced this person to have multiple transfers of $25 million through this deepfake. So, again, if you are talking to a trusted realtor, accountant, maybe you're talking to Stu, there are certain tells that you can see using the deep fakes. So again, look for features like the glasses, the hair. Ask them some questions that only they would know. Maybe some weird things about the voice or inconsistencies in the movement and motion. I mean, you saw we pulled it off. I think hopefully it turned out pretty well at the beginning of the presentation to do a real-time deepfake. So as these tools get better and better, it's going to be harder and harder to detect this. So you just have to be aware and cognizant. What we're also seeing are threat actors using deepfakes to get hired into organizations and corporations. They can pretend to be somebody on LinkedIn, right? So that's how I got Stu's photo to be able to do it in real time. They can pretend to be somebody that they're not. If interviewers ask them a question, they can have an earbud and ask the same question to somebody that's listening to provide them with the answer. Once they get access into an organization, now they can commit a whole bunch of other frauds and criminal actions within really any organization. So it's going to be a real challenge as we move forward with this new fun thing called AI. All right, my last slide with takeaways. I talked a lot about incident response plan. I talked about the increase in deepfake and sophistication for social engineering attacks, higher sophistication. One of the things that a lot of people don't tend to spend a lot of time around is figuring out what you actually have. So if I were to ask you today, what systems are sending information out to the internet or exposed to the internet, that should come very quickly. And if it's not, you should ask your support team, IT professional, whoever you're working with today, to make sure you understand where your data and where your systems are located. Absolutely turn on multi-factor authentication. Do not wait another minute. Keep your systems updated, both IT and OT, operational technology. And if you need any resources, cyber.gc.ca has a ton of terrific information available to you. And as always, I got to put a plug in for MNP. Our whole thing is about a coffee cup because we believe everything can be solved over a cup of coffee. So with that, I will pass it over to the real Stu, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Eugene. You got a big round of applause if you couldn't hear it. I think you scared the crap out of a few people in the room. Got some nervous laughter throughout the presentation. So just before we open it up for questions, I just do want to share one quick story that relates to one of the farm clients that we work with at MNP. And this client got a phone call from their banker one day. And in this case, the bank was required to call them just to get a verbal confirmation of any transactions that the the farmer had initiated via email or anything else, and they were calling to confirm that they were for sure wanting this $2 million wired to a South American country for whatever it was they had said they were buying. And in this case, the hackers had hacked the Gmail account of the farmer, and they had studied that account very closely. And the wording that they were using in terms of how they were writing that email back to the banker was they spoke in the exact same language that that producer would normally speak in, using all sorts of like slang and stuff like that that producer would normally how they would normally write an email. And so luckily in that case, the bank had a procedure in place that they would call and get a verbal confirmation before they did this. Otherwise, they would have just up and sent the $2 million thinking that this was the farmer that had initiated it via email. So there's just all sorts of this stuff coming at us. I'm pretty sure everybody in the room here today that's running a farm or running a business that's supporting the ag industry is using either a smartphone or a computer to do what you're doing. So we're all exposed to this kind of stuff. And the other thing I just wanted to say, again, before I turn it over for questions, and I think what I'll do is I'll get the mic to whoever wants to ask questions, that way Eugene can hear, is that a lot of people don't know this about MNP, but we have been over the last, what is it, probably 20 years or so, Eugene, we've been building a very large technology practice. So we're well known for accounting and taxation. We're not necessarily well known for technology, but we're getting there. And so Eugene is one of many people at MNP that work in the technology sector, but him and his team specialize on cybersecurity threats. And so just one of the things we wanted to make people aware of today was that MNP does a lot more than just accounting and tax. All the stuff you saw today, we help companies protect themselves from those types of threats. So, and the last piece on that, Eugene, is we're currently piloting some work with some farm clients of ours to try and get a process refined so that we can go out directly to farms and have a tailored solution for your cybersecurity needs and make a plan for you on your farm. We're designing this specifically for farms so that we don't show up and try to help you implement a plan that Petro-Canada would implement or somebody like that. I mean, that's not what you're going to need on your farm, but we're working on it to get it tailored specifically for farms so that when we show up, it makes sense what we're talking to you about. So is that a fair description of what you're doing there, Eugene?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So with that, maybe we'll open it up for questions. Anybody have any questions for Eugene while we have him here? Anybody brave enough to share a story, or got one over there?
Not a Leaf fan, is it?
You actually got some cheers for the Montreal Canadiens. I was surprised.
So you never touched on the use of VPNs at all with public networks and anything. Is that sort of gone by the wayside? It's not really giving you any protection anymore?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is kind of like the NordVPN stuff that they're advertising. So I'm not a big proponent of the anonymizers or the VPNs that are being sold, because they talk about how they're using military level encryption. Well, that's in use today when you make a transaction with your bank. All the information is encrypted, right, over public Wi-Fi. The fact that they can see what websites you're going to, you would cover that up in the VPN. But in my opinion, it really doesn't buy that much more security, because you're already using military grade encryption to basically do everything over the internet today.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Anybody else? I think
the only caveats too is if you're trying to get US content from Netflix, then I guess it's a fair use of the tool.
I should share too that Eugene's predecessor, who ran the practice before he did at MNP, all of the MNP partners were at an AGM in Miami and they did the same thing to us down there, and then they shamed everybody by sharing everybody's password on the screen. And there was some pretty funny ones, actually, some pretty embarrassing passwords that people were using. And so we all got a lesson. That was actually 2016 that happened. We got a lesson in what he was talking about there, on the stealing your information. I was actually one of them who got caught as well, but I luckily didn't have an embarrassing password. But we were all told to go and change your passwords immediately, because they're all now compromised. So. Yeah. Especially since we now have IT guys making life really interesting. Anybody else?
I'll ask a question. So I'm going to be open and honest and say I'm one of those people that get very frustrated because you need a password for everything. So I kind of use the same password for a lot of places. So now I need to change my passwords after this presentation. But I work from home and I'm in a home office. Like, how can I protect the organization that I'm working with? Like, I get emails, so I know to look at the sender now to see where the email's coming from. Like, my executive director is Heather Watson. For the last couple of weeks, she's asking me to go get gift cards every day. And I know it's not her because the email. But, like, what else do you look for? Like, is there anything we can do to protect our IT, like, in our home offices so it doesn't affect the organizations that we work for?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I took out a bunch of content from the presentation. Like, I have examples of malware, right? Like opening attachments from people you don't know. I know it's like been talked about for years, but sometimes people just don't understand how quick and how easy it is for malware to be distributed. So definitely having an enterprise grade like antivirus, or they call them EDR tools today on your home machine, is certainly important. There are also tools that you can deploy on your mobile phone to look for that will scan for like phishing wireless networks that you would connect to, that would scan your SMS messages as they come through. One of the things I didn't even talk about today is that whole deep fake. There is also a vulnerability called Teams phishing. So people can send you unauthenticated Teams messages, and it could be the same kind of thing through email, right? Your boss is really urgently asking you to do a transfer. So typically the suggestion around anything social engineering is they're asking for anything financial, credential, anything that's sensitive. If you just call them on their cell phone to verify and validate, that's kind of the best advice I can give you. With passwords, I highly recommend using a password vault. So if you don't want to pay for one, you can use the one that's in your browser. It's better than nothing. Again, there are attacks that can compromise the browser passwords. But again, if I look at the 80-20, I would rather you have a strong password for multiple sites than using the same password over and over again, because those passwords are going to get compromised. We can do searches on the dark web looking for people's credentials. They're out there all the time. So I would highly recommend you have a vault and you have multiple passwords. The other thing I'll leave you with is the whole concept of changing your password every 90 days. That's kind of historical now. What they're suggesting now is, around once a year, but use a long phrase, like use a sentence with special character, something that's easy for you to remember. Use that instead of a password. But yeah, using a vault, a passphrase, those are kind of the biggest recommendations I can give you.
Great. Thanks, Eugene. I think we're the only thing between these folks and lunch, so that's why we're getting no questions. Either that or they're just going all panicked and busy changing their passwords right now. So thanks, Eugene, for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully all of you found this to be a useful session. And yeah, like I said, if you do want to do anything for your business, we can definitely, we're definitely in a position that we're going to be able to help farms do this. I'm sure there's other companies out there as well that do it, but I highly recommend you do look into this for your organization. Just the amount of attacks that are going on out there right now, you really don't want to have to go through a major cyber incident with your operation, and especially if you're running, robotics and stuff like that on your operation, you might want to look into how well secured that stuff is. I was talking to a dairy farm about them using robotic milkers, and they said, well, what would happen if the system got compromised? Like, are you on a closed system in the farm, or is that tied to the cloud somehow? And they're like, geez, I don't know. So well, maybe you should ask, because if you got somehow hacked and you couldn't milk, then what would you do? Like, can you, and I'm not a dairy expert, as you'll find out in the next 5 seconds, but I said, like, what do you do if the robots won't milk? He's like, I don't know. I don't have a backup. I don't have another parlor. So I said, well, that's what we're dealing with now. Is you heard that JBS, so one of the meatpacking plants, got hacked, shut their plant down for a significant period of time. You know, like, what would happen to just you as a dairy farmer if your system got hacked and you couldn't run your robots, for example? So it's happening all over the place, and yeah, but there are ways to protect yourself and make it a lot harder and make it a lot safer for you to operate. So that's just the message we wanted to get across today. So anything you want to add, Eugene?
I think you summed up well, Stuart.
Okay. Thanks, folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much to Stu and Eugene. To say that was an interesting presentation is definitely a understatement. It was eye-opening, that's for sure.